one, I either come home wound up because we have killed it and had a big day and I'm just on top of the world. Oh, yeah. Or number two, I've had my teeth literally kicked in all day, okay, and I can't take it out on my family.
Those are the good days.
So both of those, I've had to learn, how do I not push that on my family? They're excited to see me, either my kids or my wife. How do I bring them whatever I have left of best, or I find some more on my way home?
Hey everyone, welcome to Crossroad Conversations with the Lewis Brothers, where we aim to share real stories about running a successful family business while working through adversity and pouring back into our community that keeps our doors open every single day. We're your hosts, Shelby, Matt, and Taylor, and we'll be bringing you real, relevant local business advice, maybe some automotive insights that are sure to change the way you look at running a business or buying a car, and maybe even throw in a plug for you to do business with us here locally.
Welcome to Crossroads Conversations with the Lewis Brothers. Hey, episode 19, almost knocking on the door of 20 episodes.
We're getting there.
We have went over so much, but there's still so much to go over. So joining in, making sure you're being a part of it. Matt, where were we at last time we met?
And last time we met a little bit, of course, we recorded a little bit before Christmas, yes, but then it's coming out now. It was a really interesting subject about where do I start? How do I find new business opportunities? So if you didn't listen to that, go back and listen to episode 18. But I'll give you a couple teasers. A couple things we talked about is, like in our business, we would go to accounts payable and ask accounts payable to say, hey, show us where we have reoccurring charges that we're spending every single month. Could we self-perform that work? Because if we could self-perform that work, we automatically have ourselves as a customer, and it might make sense for that additional source of revenue. You know, and then Shelby and Taylor brought up about how important it is to have different pieces of business that kind of insulates you from the ups and downs of the market, because you have all these different streams of income coming in. So if you didn't hear that, hey, go back and check it out. It's sure to help you if you're kind of teeter-tottering of, should I open this business? Should I expand my business? So on and so forth.
Absolutely there. Hey, and making sure we're on, check us out there at lewissuperstore.com. Hey, what did we drive this week? I always love this. I love this about engines, and this is a small plug that they do. They always name engines, and I love it because you get into, but the truck we drove today was a Ram.
Okay.
And used to be the Hemi motor.
Okay.
That's the whole thing.
Sure.
But they did a new age motor. It's called the Hurricane motor. And I love this, of names of Hurricane and Godzilla and EcoBoost and everything else. But Hurricane motor, and they took a play off of what Ford's done in the past of, you know, a V6.
That's right.
It is turbocharged.
That's right.
That absolutely, and what does it have in common from previous generation motors that makes it really effective?
So what they took in play is they took a page out of Ford's book. They started back in 2011 on this, and they go, hey, how can we get V8 or better performance, yet get good V6 gas mileage? Well, the way you do that is with turbochargers.
Yes.
The one thing different they did with the Hurricane motor is it's an inline six. And we'll get a little technical for you. It's like the Cummins engine that you have in your 3500. It's an inline six. Now, the purpose of an inline motor is instant low-end torque.
Yep. Okay.
The downfall of a turbo is turbo lag to produce the power. Well, when you match two turbos to an inline, you get the instant torque that gets you going, and the twin turbos, they keep you going.
Okay.
So that's a big deal in this motor. You know, they got a standard output and a high output. That standard output's 420 horse. The high output goes all the way up to 540 horsepower, which is a lot. You may think the motor's new, but it's been running in the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer for the past 2 years. So it's been tested quite a bit out there. So all I got to say, no different than we told all the customers back with the EcoBoost back in the day. Just come drive it. We'll tell you what motor's in it after you drive it, and then tell us what you think.
Yeah, so it's still going to tow a whole lot.
Yes.
Like we've learned that our EcoBoost customers now won't drive anything but the Eco.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Tows all of it. But when you're not towing, it gets amazing fuel mileage.
That's right.
It's been super reliable.
Absolutely. That's been huge there. Hey, diving into our first topic here and getting in the middle of it, but separating home life from work life. Don't bring in your stuff. Hey, we're getting in the middle of this. Everyone always gives us such
I wanted to talk about.
I know. Everyone gives us such a hard time about this. So whenever we were talking about going over this, we were going to give, kind of an outward perspective on it. But Shelby's like, no, No, people want to know what we do and everything else. And we're going to be a little bit different because it's been baked and ingrained into us. But, diving into it, how do you leave emotions for family, kids, relationships at home?
Well, I'm first going to dive into Shelby called me out about it. So there's got to be some reason. So I get a little bit of rebuttal there. And the only reason I was hesitant when we were talking about this is because how ingrained it is.
I think your point, not because you didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Probably you'll talk about it, but you're not going to shut down on me. But I think it was because you overly thought like it's ingrained in us so everyone knows. Right? It was just assumed like,
That's true.
No, everyone knows.
That's true.
But I was like, no, let's break this down because the home and life, in case you don't know, it's the three amigos, the three brothers. Our home and our life, we don't all live together. Spoiler alert.
We have before.
Yes, we have before. And we live really close to each other.
Yeah,
We're all within a mile and a half of each other. But I wanted to say, no, let's dive into this and really break it down. So your first thing was, how do you leave? And this is when you go from home to work. How do you leave your emotions, your family stuff at home?
And I think that's important because mentally, especially in the business we're in with dealing with customers and dealing with other employees, mental is the biggest thing to drive success or not. So if your mental game is not in it, you're not going to win. And we do this goofy thing called a state change.
Yeah. So walk us through what's that?
So the state change is basically we're going to change our state of mind. And that means we're in the best state of mind to win. And if you'll think out there, whenever you've been in a flow state or you've been really pumped up about something or really focused about something, there's hardly anybody that can knock you off your path. And we know everybody has tough things that happen on their way to work or with their family. So we do a state change to make sure we're in the best state of mind to win every single day. So now let's dive into that about how we separate home and work. And I guess we started off on the way to work. Is that what you guys were saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it talks about like, how do you limit personal discussions at work? And ours is tricky, of like, we don't text each other a whole lot. We don't call each other a whole lot, right?
Yeah, we just work.
That's more so because, and it's probably just expected because you talked about it. It's ingrained in there, and that's different than a lot of people. So let's talk about, of somebody coming in, you see, because there is instances that it does carry over. That a employee that we see, it carries over. So how do you work through with that with an employee if you see something carries over?
So I'll tell you, for example, and then Shelby, you can go to this because I know you just got back from a trip too. But I'll tell you, I just got done with a run this weekend, and it was posted on social media. So people wanted to ask about it. They wanted to hear about like what was going on personal life wise. I wouldn't necessarily talk about it in the morning because I want to set an example. I'm there to get something done. I mean, I'm nice and I say good morning to people. And if somebody's like, how'd your run go? Looks like you killed it. I said, man, it was a great time. Thank you. And then I keep moving on. I won't until I find a pocket in the day after I make sure that I've done my ABCs throughout the day of making sure everybody's going, making sure all the employees that are counting on me to make sure everything's moving forward, all that stuff is progressively moving forward. I've gotten through my daily habits for the business before I'll circle back around. I'm like, okay, they cared to hear about that. So I need to at least spend a little bit of time, and then I'll limit myself to just a few minutes and it not to be an entire conversation.
That is so important, and we have to make sure, and this is something we're learning. We're learning very much, and I'm probably more so not an open book of going through, but more so acceptable to that. Or going through
and show your eye.
Yes. And that's y'all are better at just absolutely throwing it in gear and focused on. And I know what I'm doing, but sometimes I'm going through. But it is so important. We have seen you have to know and you have to go through with them. But we have to make sure they're productive. Our machines are turned on, but then circle back around. They care enough. And on the flip side, you have to care enough if you want to go back to a previous episode of employee retention. You have to know and being in the middle of that. So there's a very fine line.
So I'll tell you, like, in the business aspect of what Matt was talking about, and he's the far spectrum, Taylor's the other far spectrum that like he'll come back and tell the stories. I'm somewhere in the middle, depending on how my morning went.
Sure.
Of how early I woke up and how hard I hit it, of how extreme I'll go.
Sure.
But we jokingly, and I'll tell you real, I'm not telling you exactly how business goes. I'll tell you how it goes for us. I'm like, hey, let's all get in a circle. Everyone tell me real quick, how was your weekend? How was your Christmas? How was your things? Okay, good, great, grand, wonderful, let's hit it.
Yeah.
And I realize there has to be a little more to it. And,
Sure.
you know, Matt talks about that. It's funny, you say something, I want to break it down. Social media is so, you know, it's social media, right? So I just got back from a week-long skiing trip with my family. And generally speaking, there's an unwritten code that's not written and not spoken, but generally I will not post anything while I'm gone. And
Sure.
It's just that I don't know. But then sometimes my wife will post something and then people will text me like, hey, you're here. I was like, she's like, oh, should I not have posted that? I was like, you live your life. Don't let me change that.
Sure.
But it's kind of funny how that goes because people sometimes will ask like, hey, where'd Taylor go? I'm like, I ain't got no clue where he went. Like, we don't talk about it. And until you post on social media, then everyone knows and then they want to talk about it. And yes, sometimes I want to talk about those things. And sometimes I just want to go 100 in this direction
Sure.
and then come back like without pausing and go 100 in this direction. So when you post that on social media,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I'll just do a recap after I'm back from something, then I'll do it. And they're like, oh, you went somewhere? It's like, oh yeah, I'm already back doing 100 this
Sure.
direction. So it's so tricky because sometimes you are trying to separate work from home.
You are.
And so when it's time to come back to work, God, sometimes the small talk just eats me up.
It does, and I have to, like you said, I'm on the other end of it. I have to remind myself, though, it's common ground that the employees are trying to connect.
It gives them something to talk about.
It does, because then if not, what am I going to talk to them about? How to run the business?
Like, how's the numbers? Man,
You know
how's
what
the
I mean?
numbers?
It's like, hey, well, let's talk about your profitability. And, you know, like when I'll walk through one of the texts, it's like, hey, let's talk about your business plan for 2025.
They're not going to have.
It's like, how can they relate?
So then there's relatability. And if, you know, and so then that social gives them, they can see.
Sure.
And then it's okay. If you can find your pocket
You can find your
to
pocket.
when to talk about it, so then you know that they're, you know, because no one likes when you're, you know, when you're working and you try to create a small conversation and you're like, okay, yeah, how many hours did you get out? They're like, well, that guy's an a-hole. You know, you don't want that. But so it's so tricky and we're talking about home while you're at work. And so we have to realize that with employees that you can hear their story and help them be productive at the same time.
I think that's important and we're learning. I'm definitely trying to move forward about understanding a little bit of that balance, because that personal connection at a level needs to be there. But I tried to lead by example, going, hey, I'm not walking in the door and that's the first thing I'm talking about. Because I want my managers the same way. If they go on some sort of epic elk hunt or this or that and they want to come back and talk about it, like, great, but make sure you've at least gotten logged into your computer and everything that's going on, that like your number one first, like the business. Because, you know, in my mind, it's in the back of my mind, hey, we've got almost 300 employees that are dependent upon me to make sure that everything's still moving forward before we talk about what I did. You know, before we go about how to separate that, I do want to bring up, though, if you're managing people and you know they've gone on something and you know their personality, like you know they need to be able to tell everybody about it.
Sit there.
You can't shut those people down because they'll just go in the back room and talk about it.
So like if you use the three of us, like you might as well just ask Taylor, hey, how was your weekend? How was your trip? And then productively, quickly get them through that, right? Don't sit down with a cup of coffee in the middle of the leisure room.
No.
Or if you know you got an employee that's going to have to tell multiple people about it, you know, what you brought up earlier, you know, in a nice way, you get more people around and like, hey, let's just pull it all out of you because we know you're going to be talking about
And
it
I
all
say
day.
that jokingly, but we've nicely done it. I'm like, hey,
have.
hang on, Mason. Let me get everybody in here.
Hang
I
on.
want
Y'all
everybody
gotta hear
to this. Get in here, you know?
So then you knock it out. And then it's like 5-10 minutes and the whole sales floor, the whole service department, the whole parts department has heard about that epic adventure that went on or whatever it was. And then boom, everybody cared. Great, good job. And you move on.
Yeah.
Instead of having to go around 10 times behind the scenes and tell it took 4 hours.
Absolutely. That's increasing your productivity level of continuing to go on, hitting your switches and your metrics, how you're wanting to get the day going, but obviously touching that. I want to go back and circle because they're going to want to hear this.
Okay.
We've talked all about positive. We talked about leaving feelings at home. So going back to this, you have an employee that you can see on their face. Hey, they brought all their feelings inside with them. How do you address that? Like, what do you do? Is that something you push past, or is that something that you go and address it?
So to me, now, this is employee by employee case basis, okay? All right. And I'm going to try to stay positive, but you told me to go on the negative here.
No, it's just addressing
it depends upon the employee. If I have an employee that is constantly positive, and I'm not having to go around and hit them with a jump box every single morning in the ether, and I can see something's weighing on them, and it normally doesn't weigh, and they're good at processing that stuff. Again, I get everything started for the morning, okay? Because nothing's on fire, okay? We don't need to call the police department. We don't have to shut down the business. So let's at least go around and make sure all of our productive employees are productive. And then I'll either call them into my office, or if they have an office, I usually go to their office because it's their space and they're more comfortable there. And I'll talk to them about it.
Absolutely.
But I make sure I'm not going to do that at an expense of others. So I'm not going to cancel a meeting. I'm not going to make others wait in a meeting. We'll address it once everything's gone. Then we sit down and we talk about it. So that's the person that I know is, normally positive. It can usually push through, but I can read on their face because I know that it is going to bug them the whole 8 to 10 hours they're going to be there through the day, and their productivity is going to be zero. And in fact, if I don't talk to them and somebody else, then they might turn somebody else to be negative, and then you got two people being unproductive for the day.
Yeah, and it's important because you have the ability to filter, right? Someone else will have the ability to filter. They won't have the ability to be a sounding board without being a resounding board. You know what I mean? Like, you can do that, and I think it's important that you say that, make sure that they're productive. But I think you can also say, like, hey, I can see something's up. I'm in the middle of something, but I promise I'm going to be right back and we can talk about this. So if they're like, okay, somebody cares, I'm going to get to dump. And 9 times out of 10, if you allow them to say something, they can decompress and move on. Someone cares, someone listens, and then you can have them or their department manager circle back to them like, hey, they're having a hard time at home. Junior's got all D's in class or whatever. Or they had a flat tire. If it's something you can help with, then you most certainly do. But I think just knowing that someone will listen and knowing that someone cares will solve majority of the problems.
That's a great point that you tell them and you at least acknowledge the situation and say, hey, let's make a point, carve out some time. Let me get through this next meeting and then we'll talk. I'm going to jump back over to what Taylor said multiple times in other episodes, and I know he'll resonate with this, but Shelby made a great point there of, hey, when you sit down and talk to them, just listen and allow them to dump it all out. It's no different than conflict resolution that we talked about, or an angry customer that comes in. Is sometimes they just need somebody to talk. I have to remind myself that time 8,700 times a day because I'm a problem solver and I want to get to the problem. I want to find a solution. I want to figure it out, check it off, and move on. And that's not always the best attack, especially if you need to get a employee back on track.
And sometimes they don't even want the problem solved. It's the same thing we talk about with our wives, and then we'll go into that later. But like, hang on, don't solve my problem like so easily.
Yeah,
like, it's not that easy. They just want to be heard.
Absolutely. So that's a good part of that, of going over, and previously we had talked about. But one, we want to be able to be the one that can be at attention. So if we know something's wrong, helping it how we can. But on the flip side, we've got that great mentality built in that we've built in with our managers of, hey, let's see how we can positively send this on and be able to help diffuse. So big deal there. That's not something you ever love doing or anything else, but it's something you definitely have to deal with if you want your team to be successful and moving forward and everything there. Hey, in going through this, we'd kind of talked about it, but, setting your mind on work and going through and figuring out anything that triggers any home life. So that's continuing on. Anything else that y'all have in that area that y'all think we didn't touch on?
So let's talk about that. We've talked about what we do to help manage employees when they come to work and something's going on, or if something positive has happened. How do we harness that positivity, let it be heard, but then move on? What we haven't talked about is how the three of us individually, let's do the journey on the way to work or getting prepared to work because we got to be ready to handle all of this.
Oh, yeah.
And if you guys could see behind the scenes of years and years of activities, you absolutely never know what's going to smack you in the face every day. I'm just telling you, it could be anything. It'd be, I've been punched in the face. Okay. By the employee. I have had people run into things. Police, like all of it.
Yes.
All of it. So you have to mentally, like, before you get out of your vehicle and open your door, because I don't care how early you think you go open your door, somebody, I'm not going to say names, will be there waiting with a clipboard for you. So it's the routine you go through in the morning. Mm-hmm. And most people that would see us, especially like myself, I'm not naturally a morning person, and I'll wake up and I'm like, well, no, world, what do you got for me today? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm not. I'm like dragging myself out of bed, like, let's go. So it's what you go through to get your mindset right to handle whatever comes at you.
Yeah, so it's so important, and it's not easy, like you said, but I've said it before, anything worth having does not come easy.
Yep.
And we've made our mind up, we're going to show up to work tomorrow, right? Mm-hmm. Unless we have something else come up, we're going to be there. So you might as well do the best at it and be the best at it. And so that I have to start super early, because I have this deficiency in my mind that if I don't get it done early, mm-hmm. I will never find the time to catch it later. So it always starts out with the morning exercise routine. It hasn't always been that way, mm-hmm. and it dips and flows, but having an accountability partner, making sure that you're there. But so I have to make sure I'm ready to go. Mm-hmm. All my stuff's packed the night before.
Sure,
that's key.
My alarm clock is not in my bedroom, so I cannot snooze it. It's in the kitchen, and I'm afraid I'm awake everyone at 4:30 a.m., so I have to get up quickly.
Sure.
And go turn it off. I can't get on my phone and start scrolling. I have to immediately get in the car and start moving. Mm-hmm. And so then in the car, it might be listening to a book.
Yep.
Sometimes it's too early, and I'm like, my brain can't process. You're sending it to me way too fast. So maybe it's just the radio. Maybe it's nothing. But then it's making sure that I exercise of some type of form.
Sure.
So that I can, and we've talked about that, exercise is my version of, and a lot of people's version of, making sure that you get all the stuff out. Like whether it be home stuff or the stuff from the previous day at work that you're like, this morning we got papers from a customer from an attorney, and you cannot let it derail you, mm-hmm. right? We laughed about it, and not laughed like, hey, we're laughing them off, because we knew the customer, because we had already killed them with kindness, mm-hmm. and he's just looking for help, and it was us versus another Ford dealer versus Ford, and all these things, and so you just have to be ready for it. And so then if I can shake that stuff off and not let it pile up from today to tomorrow to the next day, so exercise, listening to a book, mm-hmm. Just making sure that I'm 100% ready and right to go, that I've sweated it out at every level, and dove into the cold plunge of some sort. And mm-hmm. so then no matter what comes, we're going to be good to go.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's each person finding their routine. For me in the morning, it's like, then when I get up, I've laid out and I've prepared the night before, like Shelby's talking about, but then my coffee's ready. I get my coffee. I just have just a few minutes of just waking up and coming awake, and then it moves to me of, I get in the sauna, and when I'm in the sauna, then I'm also having my morning devotion, my quiet time as well, just to get my mind right. And then, just a routine has been that cold plunge, because then when my head goes under the water and I'm in the cold plunge every single day, my mind's right.
Yeah.
Because it's clearing me out. So then I transition from that. And then when I'm driving, depending on where I've cold plunged, if I'm driving, then once as I get, and it depends upon traffic, but is the type of music that I listen to. Because then it's more of a pump up. Okay, mm-hmm. Like my mind's clear. Now let's elevate. I don't wake up and boom, it's AC/DC.
No.
But it comes in stages. After my mind's got right, I'm clear, I've planned, I'm ready to go, so on and so forth. And then no matter what hits me coming in, I'm ready. It's you got to flip the switch when you're in a position that and you don't know what's coming at you, but stuff's going to come at you, is you expect it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if you'll expect it, it doesn't come off guard. It's like, hey, I don't know what's coming at me today, or who I can positively help today, or problem solve or listen to, but it's going to come at me, and I'm ready for it. Come on. Mm-hmm. Come on.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's all so important to have in that morning routine, is just set up correctly wherever you have it set up, of preparing the night before, of the thing that's crazy of going off of, setting up your healthy eating diets or anything else, it has to be planned the night before. I've dove into this good old carnivore diet and ate no less than 350 steaks the last.
You've been in
There's a lot of steaks. I bought a whole loin the other day.
I saw you bought a whole cow.
Ribeye. Oh no, my cow's coming next week. I'm still waiting on
It's not there yet.
No, that was a whole ribeye.
Bring a
loin.
picture
And
next
let me go ahead and tell you, this is my bargaining side. I was in Sam's. The guy basically
Ain't no
sees
party with you and me, but go ahead.
No, there's not. But I figured out if you buy the whole loin, it's $1 less per pound, and so it was saving me almost $20 for the whole thing.
Like,
and then I
about
realized,
20 pounds?
yeah, absolutely, it's the whole loin, so cut it apart or anything else. But that's planning, and it's so easy. And some people would never eat meat, and they think this is the hardest thing ever. I love
You
meat.
do you.
Obviously, look at me, but I'm going through.
But you're
looking good.
making changes,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
you're learning the discipline.
Discipline of that, so easy, so busy of going through everything there. I have to attribute, I love music in the morning. Even if I'm just waking up, you can throw music on. I love music, and music dictates so much of my mood. Sarah, my wife, thinks I might be part Bohemian because I love reggae music. And not like of anything, it's just like, kind of getting in there. You get it off of the Kenny Chesney or anything else of that, just like real relaxed. But then I can throw the gas on and be able to get into a BPM or a different mix or anything else. So coming in the morning, as long as I can have my type of music that I can transition to, then going into the gym or then coming into my office that I have music going, oh, that's my staple. And I don't care if you come and slug me in the side of the head. I'm already good going.
I'm good.
And it doesn't matter. And I know that's coming.
Yeah.
So my deal in the morning is obviously transitioning into being more prepared there of having that. But if I've got music,
You're good.
it's good.
That's such a
It's
good thing.
good. I'm in the middle of it.
I'll point that out because there was a couple key things there. The discipline and of planning the night before.
Yes.
Like, do not wait till there's a problem to figure out how to solve it. So pack your stuff the night before.
Yep.
Prep your food.
Yep.
If you're going to eat McDonald's, then just pre-order your McDonald's, I guess. Lord, I don't know. But just prepare for that, because if you wait till you're hungry, then you're going to be busy. And then your music. So that's funny you say that. So in my routine, in you talking about that, I have a timer, and it's funny because Taylor, I gave him finally the access to the sauna. So every morning the timer's set at 4:30 that the sauna kicks on, and then also within the gym the volume is set to 100% and it's set for a workout playlist. So no matter how you're doing, when I walk in, the sauna's clicked on at 5 a.m. when I get there, and the music's on full blast. So you walk, it's just like, oh Lord, here we go, better get us in the pre-workout.
That's a jolt
But
of energy.
all those things of pre-planning, and being super disciplined, then bring on the world. You know what I mean?
I think the point of that is that we want the listeners to know, because they see the other side of it, is that none of this, no matter whose routine you take in here, none of this comes naturally.
No.
All of it takes planning, and it takes work. So if you're sitting out there, if you're an employee of ours listening to this and you're like, I don't know how they do it, they're always positive, they don't get rattled, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't come by like good genes or this or
Not
that.
from car college, because I got to point out, you were late to school every day of high school because I had to ride with you. My roommates in college had to wake me up. And if I wouldn't have had roommates, I wouldn't have made it through the classes. But you have to have the willingness and the ability. You got to want it more than you want to not have it.
But I will tell you, the music, that was planted into us early on. Okay,
Oh,
because
yeah.
Dad had CMT's top 10 music
always
videos
play
on
every
in the morning that were playing as we were getting
That
ready.
was just a nice way of waking us up. No, he wasn't
Like
really
ready to go.
Yes.
The zenith was up as loud as it got.
Absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there of going through, of being prepared, doing all your routines, everything else. It's not something you're just born into. You learn it by hitting the wall a couple of times and realizing, I don't want to walk in late and my head be knocked off, because it's not fun. If you come in late, that's the morning you're going to get hit with the anger customer every single time. So of learning that, hey, you know what? I'm going to wake up a little earlier.
Yep.
I'm going to make sure I'm in the right mindset, and I'm going to lead the team in the right direction by choosing to do this. So you learn that by Hard Knocks instances, everything going through there. Hey, before we get too long, we got to hit our automotive fun fact quiz of the week.
Okay.
We got
What was the last car made to offer a cassette tape player?
We got to get
last
this.
one.
Cassette tape
people
player.
were hung up on this, and it was also on the CD, but we're talking cassette.
Yeah, we're talking cassette, old
right.
school.
Okay.
Having
What's our
so,
options?
you know, this had to be in there. A Ford Crown Vic,
standard feature.
Yep.
a Toyota Camry, a Silverado 1500, or the Volkswagen Jetta.
I'm going to nail this one. I think I got it.
Absolutely. So
No, the answer.
you
yeah.
hold that to yourself. Shelby, transition into the next section.
All right, so now we'll flip it the other way around.
Okay.
Separate work life from home life.
Okay. You think we should start? Let's start this time kind of with our routine like we'd start before, and then we could talk about the employees. And I didn't mind jumping in first there.
Go ahead.
All right. So when I leave work, and again, it's not predictable what happened, but something happened.
Or even, let's say this, before you go on that, you don't even know what time.
And you don't even know what time. You don't even know what time, for sure. And, you know, my wife and I, we've been together for a long time now, and we dated a long time before we got married because it was really important that we understood, like, that, hey, this is what
Like
it
you
is.
guys are under a trial period.
Well, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But it's not like, hey, I'm not going to be at the bar. You're not going to be able to find me here or there, but I am going to work and I'm going to provide for our family in X, Y, and Z. But there's a couple things that will happen because we're in a very emotional business, a pretty high-strung business of, one, I either come home wound up because we have killed it and had a big day and I'm just on top of the world. Or number two, I've had my teeth literally kicked in all day, okay, and I can't take it out on my family.
Those are the good days.
So both of those, I've had to learn, how do I not push that on my family? They're excited to see me, either my kids or my wife, or hopefully all of them. How do I bring them whatever I have left of best, or I find some more on my way home? So my drive on the way home is very conscious about resetting and recalibrating for my family. They don't need to help me problem solve anything at work. Now, if I had a successful day and they ask about it, I want to just share the success with them because they want to be a part of it, okay? They don't need all the details, okay? They don't need how many ROs per hour and all that stuff. Just, hey, we had a big day. You know what I mean? So one of the things I started doing that works for me on the way home, okay, I might start off listening to music. By the time I hit the interstate, I listen to some type of comedy. So on the way home, I need something to make myself laugh that has nothing to do with my day, has nothing to do with business. And all it is it's like an intervention in my mind that gets it flipped a different way to go, let me at least laugh no matter what happened. Let me get into a new state of mind before I get home so I can flip the switch to personal.
That's pretty solid.
Absolutely. And going home, you laugh because and we have all done it and went through there, but of getting into the relationship, going through, getting in the middle of it with our spouse, and it was all that way. It's not like we talk about this. It's just what you see and what you expect and what you know that Matt's done. It's went down to Shelby, and we've all done it a little bit differently. It's come down to me, but in your relationship, you get into it and you say, hey, this is just what's going to be expected. I'm not doing anything else, and this is just what our relationship's going to be. It's not like it's going to be lack of or anything else, but you get X instead of Y or blah, blah, blah going through everything. But as the years progress going over, I love, of a routine there of which I'm now transitioning to, y'all are in later stages of, but I've got a little gremlin that's into the age of 2, and they love saying terrible twos. We just got over Christmas break, and as you can guess, she is done with Junior of having you just because he's wound up in there. But I always look forward to every single day of either texting or calling on the way home, hey, do you need anything? But I know at the end of the day, and this is expectation, I don't even know that she knows that she does it, but what it does to me of setting me up, I know that she's going to ask me, hey, how was the day? Whether it's bad or it's not, and that's probably a great opportunity, I'm never going to dump if it was bad. I'll be like, hey, we had a couple of challenges today, we got over it. But then on the flip side, we had a monster day. I'm like, oh, we killed it today. We did good. So I love setting that up, and that's just clear expectation of like, hey, she's going to ask that.
Sure.
And then we're going to move on to the next thing. So that's a great transition thing of that being able to set up of, I want to be proud and I want to say we conquered this or we moved over this obstacle or we did that. So great kind of routine of going over there, and it just transitions into everything else.
It does.
Yeah, I think it's important just understanding that there's a transition. I mean, because sometimes we close at 7, and if you get lucky, once every 2 weeks it's at 7. Otherwise, Taylor spent me, and we all have, right?
Yeah.
It's just the last to happen, but 9 or 10 o'clock at night. But so every night when I leave, and I've just transitioned to learning this. I always call my wife as soon as I leave.
Sure.
And I call her, and it's just automatic, and it's just weird, but it works. And it's like, hey, how was your day? I've never said anything except it was good.
Yeah.
And I've never gone home and talked about work. Like I've never. And so sometimes she'll hear something about, like,
Sure.
and then that's me being a little reserved. She'll hear from someone else bragging or something like, oh, you guys broke a record. I've never shared any of that with my wife of like, hey, this has been really good. And it's not because I don't want to share the wins. It's because I don't want to share the downfalls.
So,
And so I never communicate that of like, hey, it's always, hey, the day was great. If it wasn't great, it was my fault. Like I didn't set up well enough for the team to set up to be able to handle this. It was like, yeah, the day was great. And I'm like, hey, how are the kids? And my thought generally was, she works a part-time and she deals with 3 kids at home. And so I'm like, hey, if I can talk to her for 20 minutes on the drive home, then she gets to decompress all those things. So I get to help her decompress because I'm driving, right? I've got nothing else to do. And she knows I only have about 20 minutes before I walk in the door. And so then I get to go home and hang out with the kids and hang out with her. She's got to decompress because she's going to decompress different than I do. And I'm like, yeah, my day was great. My head's above the ground. I had a lot of things to work on. I never go any more depth because I don't call and talk to her during work time. If she needs something, she'll call me, but she realizes I set that precedent early. Don't call me with just a bunch of randomness because when I get home, I'm going to be your husband, I'm going to be a dad, but while I'm at work, I need to be working. So don't text me like, and she early on would. She would text me this and I wouldn't respond, and not because I was trying to be mean. And if she needed something, I would send her the password or, hey, did you answer this? But then on the way home, we decompress. And so then it flipped over to being human of dad and husband, and then just figure it out and just hang out with the kids for a little bit before you put them to bed and pack your bag and do it again.
I think a couple of things you hit on there that's important, and we've all had to learn this. And of course, all husbands in here and men in here, and we're at the end of the day, we're pretty much done.
Whipped.
You know what I mean? Like we're done talking to people, and we're pretty good about. We're going to call this good, whether it's good or not. We're pretty good about stuffing things and moving on. Women, they need to talk through it. And so you brought up a good point. I can remember a phase my wife and I were going through, and just of frustration and this and that. And like when I would know that something was on, that drive home, you might as well utilize that time, because the last thing I wanted to do was walk in after a tough day and then have to try to sit there, and I'd do it, but sit there and I know my mental face wasn't looking right, and listen to everything that went on. You might as well capitalize on that opportunity of the drive home to sit there and be a good listener and then get it out so then you can move on to the next step. And I think we talked about this on both drives, whether it's to work or back from work, and some of y'all even have a 30 or 45-minute drive. Are you utilizing that time? Are you, James Clear, this is one of my favorite books, this is called Atomic Habits. James Clear talks about that, of compounding of habits and habit stacking. And that's one of those things is you take a time that you already have opportunity and you're already doing that in your routine, and then how can you maximize that time? And I think using those preparations, whether it's on your way to work or on your way home, to make this transition we're talking about, you should do that.
Yeah. So that's really good talking about routine. Next thing I want to ask about, while you're at home, work's at work, how do you unplug while you're at home? And 2, how do you set boundaries? And, I don't know if there overly needs to be boundaries. There does, but I don't know if that's an issue. But, you guys answer those two. How do you unplug well at home, and how do you set boundaries?
So I have not always been the best at this, but through my years of, since college, 20 plus years now, back in the business, I've developed some filters based upon just hard knocks, really, and I now have a filter of, and people have told me forever, and you guys will resonate with this, is like, you have to depend upon others. You have to trust in others. You hired them to do the job. Mm-hmm. So now I run it through a filter. If I get a text message or a call, if the building's not on fire, and if we're not in a legal issue right this second that they need a high-end decision for, not to discuss what happened, but if nothing's going to change between right now talking about it and in the morning, don't steal that time, and I won't allow it from my family or my mental capacity that they deserve to have, because nothing's going to change.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change. Mm-hmm. Okay. If the freight didn't come in today, the freight didn't come in today. I don't need to know about it. Okay. And I'll tell you this, like once I went through that enough times with managers and other people, they then know. Mm-hmm. It's no different than if somebody walks up to my desk and they can see I'm working. They know it's okay to continue to come in and ask me a question if it's about something relevant right now, customers here. Yeah. If not, they know that then I'll get to it. Mm-hmm. But learning that filter, because at first, especially starting a business, you're answering every call, you're doing every text, you're running back up to the dealership, and it's just this rubber band that pulls. Yeah. And who suffers is your family.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that's good of figuring out how to unplug. Taylor, what's your any tricks or tips?
Yeah, I'd say definitely go into that of knowing, and I've in the stages of learning that more and more now. There, two things happen. You gain your time back there, and your team around you grows. Sure. Mm-hmm. They're either going to grow or you're going to figure out, hey, I've got a problem. I need to help either elevate them or find somebody else that can work in that area. So that's really big there. Growing or unplugging just has to be that you get home and you're getting involved with whatever that is for the night. Right now it's little Junior running around and everything else. So he getting involved with him and being in the middle of all of it and I love being able to hand off or anything else, because when you get there at the night, your wife's done with everything else, and you're excited because you worked all day long, and no matter what stage you're at, you're like, oh, okay, I want to be involved in this because it's a complete different thing. So it's definitely getting back in family, instantly back in there, that will help decompress.
There's some good points there that you pointed out, Matt, of understanding that. And I think, this is just my communication strategy, and my team around me has understood that. Some of them are on the same level, but they at least understand it, that if something needs immediate attention, they'll call me. Yep. And if it's time for me to handle that, then I'll take the call. If it's not the time, then if it's really important, they'll leave a voicemail or they'll call again, and then I'll say, hey, something that of learning, that, hey, this is my time.
Yes.
And then it'll be okay. So and that's one of those things. My wife she's so like making sure she's on time. I might go a couple of days not responding to a text or a voicemail if it's not something that needs attention right.
Sure.
I mean, if I'm at work, then I'm going to do that. But like when I get home, I'm putting my phone down and doing my very best to stay off my phone. It's going to go on a personal setting, and/or like I told you, my alarm clock is in my kitchen. I'll plug it in. If you text me after 9 o'clock, it's okay. I'm not going to respond because I'm going to be in bed by 9:30 because 4:30 is going to come early.
Yeah.
So I make understanding that boundary. It's tough, and we talk about this, but I have to say this. I have to be super mindful that when it's home time, that I'm not just whipped.
Sure.
And I'll tell you this just honestly. I've found myself before because I've gotten up so early and I'm full speed ahead. Sure. And I wore myself out. And I can get a full day or maybe a person's whole week of exercise done in the morning before they ever woke up, that I'm like, I need to go sit in my car and take a 10-minute nap before I get home, because otherwise I'll go home, and I'm not the model dad, I promise, but I work on it, that I'll just want to sit on the couch and just be toast. Like, and I should be present, but that's the thing about being physically active and making sure that you're healthy enough to be able to do that. Because you might get home and it's 8 o'clock and you left the house at 4:30 a.m.
Yeah.
And they think it's all crystals and rainbows, but you just burned every corner that you could. But it's important that you're saving a good portion of yourself to give to your family and leave work at work. Like,
Yes.
you have to do that.
I think what's important as well, I was talking about, running it through that filter, and it just came back to my mind, Taylor, as you were talking. I can remember coaching a manager through this, and after this had happened a couple times in a row, I didn't address it the first time. Manager came in and was like, hey, so-and-so, this customer was texting me about how they had this issue with the vehicle, and they were still texting at 11:30 at night and 11:45. I was like, why did you text them then?
Yeah, why'd you respond?
But I had to back up a little bit before I just smashed them with a sledgehammer, because I have to remember they're not me.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm their employer.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make me proud that they're representing us correctly.
Yes.
So sometimes you have to give them the green light that it's okay not to. So then after that happened a couple of times, I won't say this employee's name, but I said, why did you respond to them? Like, I was trying to take care of them. At 11:30 at night, what are you going to do about their check engine light on?
Nothing.
There's nothing you can do. They're upset. They're still going to be upset tomorrow. Now, if it's during work hours, totally different.
Yeah, you better
Even if it's your day off, you need to get them in contact with the service manager and move on. But if it's 11:30 at night, who knows where they've been, or if they're even in the coolies, getting it going.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yeah.
And after I went to this 2 or 3 times, this manager came back to me months later and said, thank you for doing that. It has allowed me to be present with my family, not in worry of, am I upholding what you hired me to do?
I think that's really good. I'm just understanding that.
And they got to know it's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Like, hey, it's okay. Between these hours, I want you to be your best, but then I want you to unplug. And that some of that's better learned than understood. Just like you have to learn that. So one last thing there that I'll just say, if there's anything you guys left out there of how to say no.
Okay.
Of saying no. And I think we talked about that. But if there was anything that you wanted to capitalize on, is saying no to certain things or certain obligations.
That's a tough one. That's a tough one, especially, type A personality. And again, I think as anything else, and I think this comes with, just time and wisdom, maturity, whatever you want to call it, is learning to say no because you've ran it through the filter of, does this move the needle forward? Does this grow my team? And if it doesn't, and it's just taking time away and you're just being a nice person, you need to say no. And the farther you get in your career, first starting off, you're not married, you don't have kids, your body can go off 4 hours of sleep easily. You can run wide open.
Yeah.
You can. But that then has to transition. And like anything else in life, you've got to be willing to prune some things. And again, I tell all my guys, I slow down. I've read these books on mental mind control. That's a whole different episode. But slowing down your mind and just pausing for just a second, run it through a couple checks and balances before you respond.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think huge. They're on both sides. We've talked about how it makes your team grow. The biggest other part of it is it makes us continue to grow of going through. If we continue to, of going through career path and getting to different areas, wanting to grow or do anything else there, that's the only way it allows you to be able to grow and continue to have that support and have a team underneath you. So that's really big there.
All right, so I get to pick up here, and I am now, well, I'm not going to tell you yet, the Automotive Fun Fact Quiz of the Week. You said it. You said, what was the last car made to offer the cassette tape player? Now, before you guys answer, I'm just going to tell you, my answer was wrong. My answer was wrong. So, I didn't give you a tip. The options were Crown Vic, the Ford Crown Vic, the Toyota Camry, the Silverado 1500, or the Volkswagen Jetta. What do y'all think?
Whatever. I know what the answer is. But
You're like,
I mean, I would have just always said this because this is like the tried and true. You go,
I know.
and this is a quick little hint of it. It's taxi cab, it's police vehicle, it's got everything.
I know.
It's a Crown Vic.
So you won. You won with the Crown
So
Vic.
what were you thinking it was? The Jetta?
No, I was thinking it was a Silverado.
Like a rock?
Well, the only reason I was thinking of the Silverado is in my mind, they stopped making the Crown Vic. And we looked at order guides, like with F-150s and Rams, and later on you could get it as like an option.
Well, you were thinking about the superseded the Taurus, that it was the #1 selling vehicle in 2007, and it wasn't offered to the public. It was a fleet vehicle. So, yeah, the Crown Vic was the last car to be made with the cassette tape player.
All right, this next subject, and we've talked about this, it's kind of been woven into our first two, but we'll go back around and hit on this because now we're kind of removing ourselves. And it's how do you coach others in the business to help achieve like what we're talking about? Whether it's getting prepared for the day, working through adversity in the day, or exiting the day, because our employees have to have their family support. Mm-hmm. Because in our business, I'll set the stage here, the worst thing you could do is set for a dinner date or a dinner appointment at 7:15 when you get off at 7. You know what I mean?
So that's tip #1 is properly setting expectations of time.
Yes, it really is. And we've gotten better as from a management standpoint, as now we have rotations of early nights. And it's like schedule it on your early night, but not 30 minutes after you get off. Or on your day off.
And that's one of the big things. So if you don't know our schedule, if our in the sales, let's say in the variable side, we have Sundays off. You're always guaranteed Sundays off unless something really weird. But and then you have a day off during the week. Mm-hmm. And that's when you get to properly set exactly if you want to schedule. If you want to be that person that schedules dinner or an outing on your day off, a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, that's when you get to do it.
That's right.
And so communicating that, helping the team out, because we talk about these things, but we talk about Matt's learned it, he's the oldest, and then we've kind of picked up, and then Taylor's learning it, he's the youngest, and then somewhere in the middle, we're just mixing it up. But someone who's brand new in the business, fired up, got a good job, maybe new into a relationship, and how do we properly... So helping them work that, don't just assume that someone understands, like, hey, here's how it's going to go. And we've told new people, like, don't set yourself up for failure like that.
That's really important and no different. I talked about the coaching session with a manager a minute ago because you got to remember employees, they want to make you proud.
Yeah.
And they can do it short term, and their spouse or their family, they'll be okay with it short term. But eventually, it's like 1,000 cuts. Mm-hmm. Eventually, it wears down on them. They have a bad day. They go home, and their spouse is like, maybe you should change careers. You know what I mean? Just because we didn't help coach them through that. So, Taylor, what are some of your ideas that you help employees in the situation? Maybe they're getting into business or they're going through adversity.
You know, the youngest we see of coming up through it, I love we're able to provide that great atmosphere, that we're able to lead them and show them paths and everything else. I laugh about this of early on, not of only being a brother, but of going through and saving for future or anything else, of getting into it. And we've kept that mentality of with any the employees that come into it, of being able to get into retirement, being able to get that, and you turn it on early. But on the flip side of it, I think we would all agree, and I think we probably share this, not overly of everything that happens, but we know the atmosphere is important in work.
Sure.
But to sustain in a sales career, you have to have support from home. And that support from home comes in different ways, but it's in mostly understanding everything that is going on. And knows when to talk, knows when to listen, knows when to be there and go through anything. And it is that back and forth. But that is the biggest deal of having our great relationship. But then when you have that at home as well, it is dynamite, and it just continues to go on. And I'm not talking about it being perfect. Everyone in here always has different things that they have at home and everything else. But it's that clear expectation, no different than us growing up as kids. Hey, you're going to get in arguments. You're going to get in disgruntled, anything going through. But at work, at home, everything else, you always work through it. You always work through it, and that's going to help you stay in the middle of it.
That's super good. Just communicating on that and making sure that they understand proper expectations during work.
Yeah.
So, hey, don't go and pick me up, and I'm going to go for lunch for 2 hours.
No.
and hey, here's when I'm expected to be at work, and here's when I'll be done with work-ish, depending on what's going on, and here's the day off, and we can plan some things. That's a thing I'll talk about a little bit, but yeah, I have to remember my day off is for me, but it's also for my family, right? Because I've been at work for all the other days of the hour or hours of the day. But one of the things early on was like, please, please, please don't schedule 47 things for me for my day off. So that's about me, but helping employees understand that as well, of that balance and the communication of those things.
We laugh about that, but we have, an area farm that we work together, and we build stuff on and everything else, but we'll always end up every now and then of, hey, we need to have a day working out there. And when I talk about a day, it's not like an hour.
No, it's the full
It's
day.
normally Shelby will roast a couple of chainsaws. Matt will break a couple of tractors, and I'm just in the middle of like, slow down. It's so fun, but we love that of getting in the middle of it because we just want to be a part of all of it, whether it be day of or whatever in the middle of it all. So
I think one of the expectations, that's a good point. One of the expectations I really like talking to employees about too, though, if it's their day off, take the day off.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And like in sales, that's a tough gig. Like, what if I have a customer coming in? If you've built enough value in yourself, and a customer will adjust their schedule.
Yeah.
If you've provided enough value, they'll adjust their schedule for you. And especially we're in an industry that it's unheard of a boss telling them, take your day off, prioritize that. Because we understand you have to recharge mentally and physically to be ready to go on that. Another piece here that I do want to pitch out to you guys to see what you guys would say in any department, when somebody's mind's not right and they've brought personal in or something's going on, how can that kill productivity at work? What do you do?
It's just bad. Just whenever, and I think it's addressing it early on there of just making sure, hey, well, I hear that right now, still going through turning everything on how you have to, but if it's something that needs to be addressed right then and there, like not in a group setting.
There you go.
You go and grab them, whether it's outside. So you have to know your employee, whether it's, hey, we're going to go walk the walk because they don't do good in an office.
Yeah.
They don't do their, however you get them to open up, but you have to address it right then and there.
So you go ahead and address that one-on-one
Absolutely.
in the correct atmosphere.
You're looking, this will sound wrong, but look at each person as a machine or a process.
Mm-hmm.
And if that process or that machine is not doing as it should, you have to realize the severity and what's downstream from that.
Yep.
And if it's if it's one of your department managers and they are going to affect a lot of people, you need to stop what you're doing.
Yes.
And repair that so then they can continue on, whether that's the machine or the process of, let's talk through it real quickly. So you have to make sure you do that. I want to backtrack just a second. You talked about taking your day off. That's something I struggled with for a long time, and I know we all did.
Sure.
Especially during COVID. And I had this mindset, this is just type A mentality, but during COVID, we had split shifts. And I don't fully remember what it looked like because I didn't do it.
Goes on the shift.
The shift, all shifts. And then every once in a while when I want to take a day, I'm like, hey, I'm taking my COVID shift, but it'll just be it was if it is to be, it's up to me. And somewhere along the line, I heard from someone said, because we need someone to want our job, right?
Sure.
We need somebody to take our job so we can go to the next job. So that's, a lot of times you wouldn't teach somebody what you know, because like if they know what you know, then maybe they could do your job, right?
Okay.
But thinking of taking the time to be with your family. So if you never do that and you're just like, no, I need to do it, I need to be the best, they would never want your job. So you always have to do your specific job. You can never scale. So like that was the hardest time when I first became a GM, of leaving my team.
Sure.
While they were still working deals. Like there was nothing else that I could be doing unless I was doing their deals. And then if I was doing their deals, they didn't need to be there. So it was so hard for me to leave at 7 or at 7:30 when my tasks were done, when my team was still working. I was like, I struggled with that for a long time of like, why am I leaving? They're still working.
Sure.
But then to understand that I've done my task, but I want people to a little bit want to be where I'm at. And if I'm never taking the time off and I'm always there.
Who would want that?
Who would want that, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to change my mentality a little bit that like it has to have a little bit of twinkle to it and a little bit of excitement to it. And I assure you, it's not on the far end of the beach spectrum.
Yeah, you're not playing golf at 1 o'clock.
And that was so hard for me to realize because, I'm never leaving for lunch. And I want people to know that I work hard for this, but I had to just be one with myself and realize it's okay. You put the work in, as we all do.
Sure.
Just realizing that. So helping your employees understand that as well.
That's a really good point. And I'll tell you, and we didn't dive into this, but we have to talk about it because we brought up some good subjects here. The other thing about coaching somebody during the workday is you have to have some type of an outlet, okay? Especially when a situation happens, because we're all human and we all have emotions, no matter what you say. And so then how do you reset for that next employee, that next customer? They have to have an outlet. And some of us, we call this like a lot walk. And people will tell me, like, Matt, I'll never see you get mad at somebody or this or that. I'm like, well, you don't see when I have an outlet. You know what I mean? You don't see when I go in the closet, shut the door, and I yell and I get it all out, and I got a punching bag in there. I don't, but we've talked about it. But we might, and in our business, we got a big enough piece of property. It's like, okay, just go walk the lot, check on some inventory.
Yeah.
But what is your outlet? Because you can't be in this bad state of mind and then go try to be productive. You got to be able to quickly, how do you reset? But the only way to do that is to remove yourself from the situation. That doesn't mean go home for the day, take a sick day. But that to some people, I might tell them, we got one guy that really likes Mountain Dew or likes Pepsi. And it's like, hey, go get yourself Pepsi.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then come back. You got to give them that outlet.
I think helping people understand that we talk about a show. Let's take a Branson show.
Sure.
The Dixie Stampede. How many times during the day does it happen? And so if two people in that show aren't getting along or such and such falls off the horse or they forget their lines, as soon as that next show opens and the curtain opens, you have to be thinking that was their first time to see
exactly
the first ever or the last ever Garth Brooks show we talk about, and it needs to be your best. So helping them make sure that they have their outlet and just making sure that you're ready to go. And so that lot walk or that outlet, that helps them understand that. So when the person shows up, they get their best. They're not getting their leftovers.
So that's on individual. I'll tell you another tip I've done is if I've got two employees that I know that need to mesh, let's talk about two different departments that work together.
Lunch.
I send them a lunch.
I was kidding.
No, I really do.
Tell us about even better than that.
I really do.
Break it down that more than lunch about the meeting and what you made them do. And you probably can't do this anymore, but parts of service meeting.
Yeah, so the parts and service meeting. So before you get me way down. Okay, but what I'll do is I will put them in an uncomfortable situation where it forces them to communicate.
To communicate and talk.
So we had parts and service way back in the day. If employees are listening, it's none of y'all that are currently employed. Okay. But we went to a meeting and I booked them both in the same room, so they had to share a room.
And you think that's uncommon.
What I didn't know, and this is a funny point, we got enough time. Well, the funny point is when I booked that, the hotel messed up and they only had a single bed.
Is it a king size?
So they checked in, and both of them, these two managers did not like each other, okay? And they weren't happy was their shared room. Then they had a single bed, but
that worked out.
They worked it out. But the point is I'll see, and I'll give them my card or give them money, and I'm like, you two are going to lunch. Like, no, we have a busy day. I'm like, no, you don't have a busy day. Go to lunch.
Yeah.
Or if it's mid-afternoon or mid-morning, go get coffee or whatever. But y'all are going together. And I'll even have to watch them. Here's the keys to the vehicle you're driving, and you're both riding in the vehicle together. Yeah. I know that seems childish.
No, but they'll take different vehicles.
They'll take different vehicles, meet there, sit at opposite sides of the restaurant. You have to create and put them in that uncomfortable situation. You have to get uncomfortable to be able to move past it or move on to get to a new comfortable stage. So you have to identify two different things. If it's individual or if it's two people, you have got to take the time and you've got to create that. It won't fix itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because more often than not, they will just like, nah, it'll be okay. And they'll be at half throttle, total throttle.
It'll fester.
And it'll fester for weeks. Like they're like a mule with their heels dug in thinking they're killing it and they're getting killed.
Yeah.
And so you just, as managers and as owners, you just have to help
facilitate that.
Right? You facilitate that and help them work through that.
You have to, yeah. You basically went over there. Hey, getting off of this, I have to ask both of y'all, and you can answer there. And we kind of went through everything there. But what is the most common task that you do on a weekly basis?
Most common tasks that I do on a weekly basis.
I'll tell you one real quickly,
Okay.
and this was Taylor said this morning, but one of the most common is we're in a brand new building, brand new facilities, is making sure the things are all working. So checking the thermostats, and it's funny. It's funny because in a pre-owned building, we have the most whiz-bang
Oh gosh.
backnet system, and I want to unplug it and throw it out the window. And we probably paid a whole lot of money for it. It's funny because we didn't overly even know that we had the system, because it's a system on top of a system, because in this building, there's over 37 thermostats in one building. And one's telling, and we've had a learning, we're coming up on a year, not in that building, but close to a year. And so one of the most common things is checking the systems, the physical systems, whether it be thermostats or garage door openers or lights or signs, to making sure that they're going.
I would say the most common task I have, and I'm going to generalize this, but I manage by walking around. So a common task of mine is, and then I walk pretty fast, just because I've calculated in my mind the faster I can walk, I can get more done. But my most common task is walking around through the departments, memorizing inventory, whether it's in service or sales. So then I can ask the correct questions to the management team about their department, because it's relevant. Because if I ask you a question, I've already walked through that.
You already know the answer.
That's the only reason I'm asking the question. If not, I would say, great job, you nailed it.
But you don't need to be the one that solves it. Otherwise, you don't need them.
That's right. That's right. But I better manage by knowing what I'm talking about
And you do that by
walking around.
Yep. Absolutely. I think both of y'all hit it there, but I've gone through, and I love doing this, and it doesn't matter which building it's in, walking through everywhere. Absolutely. And it's never the same time, and you're never going to track my schedule of anything else. We'd hear this of our grandfather that used to come through, and they would know when to turn the radio off or anything else, because he was coming through at this time. I love to do it completely backwards. I may go through the parts through front counter. I may come through back counter. I may go through the tech break rooms. I want to see what they're doing. Go down all the stalls of everything. One, you find things before it's too late.
Yeah.
Something's wrong. But then also you notice things when you need to, like of employees and whenever they're doing anything. So I love doing that, of going through and walking through all different areas.
You bet. Hey, what a great episode we had today on personal and business. And I know we wanted to dive deeper there versus what you hear most people say, like, hey, just leave your feelings at the curb. Like, hang on, let's peel it back. Let's talk about some relevant things that hopefully can help you business leaders out there in Northwest Arkansas better manage your business and your employees, to be a better leader by example, by listening, by pouring in. So thanks for listening to us on the episode today. Make sure to check out all of our inventory at lewissuperstore.com. Stop by anytime off exit 65. We'll give you a tour, and follow this podcast on podcastconversations.com.
Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, share it with your friends and family, even visit our website, send us the questions about what you want to know, what you want to hear, tell us about the automotive industry, family business in general. Who do you want to hear from? Send them our way, and we'll do our best to answer any questions you have, but make sure you tune in next time where we bring in another guest and we talk more about the automotive industry and all the great things going on within our business.